Good evening. Good evening. Good evening and welcome to A Seat on the Bench, Black Women and the Appellate Court, a dynamic social action program hosted by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My name is Deborah Brady and I serve as the Pennsylvania West Social Action Coordinator of Delta Sigma Theta. Today's panel marks an occasion where the East meets the West to discuss an issue that is important to the future of our judiciary, which is the gateway to access, justice, and diversity in our courtrooms. I would like to extend a welcome to our distinguished guests, our esteemed panelists, sorors of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and all of our community partners and allies that have joined us today. We are excited to host the event, and I must begin the program by reminding everyone that Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is a nonpartisan community service organization. A key part of our service mission is discussing social justice issues. Tonight, we aim to do just that. There are a few housekeeping matters, and I would like to cover those first. First, our Q&A feature is available to all attendees where you can post questions. We will try our best to integrate questions and have our panelists address various issues as time permits. Second, this discussion is being recorded. And last, the discussion will also be live streamed on the Philadelphia Alumni Chapter's Facebook page. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the Pennsylvania East Social Action Coordinator and my partner in advocacy, Marvetta Coleman.
Thank you, Deborah Brady. And yes, we are partners in advocacy. We're extremely excited tonight, and we just want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. As Deborah has already said, this is going to be a discussion We suspect that many of you have already attended a number of what would be termed candidate events. We are hosting tonight an event that is based on education, issues, systems, challenges, and cultural expansion. And so we want to have this conversation with our panelists tonight who bring some unique perspectives, who have had some unique experiences, and who are seeking to move into places that are not often reserved for African Americans and particularly African American women. We just want to also remind some of our guests that this is the Pennsylvania East and Pennsylvania West combination of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. We will be providing some information with you along the way. So what we would encourage you to do is sit back and get prepared and just get ready to hear some information that maybe you haven't heard before, maybe you haven't taken it anywhere to share with someone. We need for you to do all of the above in terms of the educational areas that we will be covering this evening. As we move to the next portion of our program, we want to introduce Patricia Williamson, who serves as the Eastern Region Social Action Coordinator for Delta Sigma Theta, along with Sonia Waters, who is the president of the Harrisburg Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, and Dr. Monica Johnson Taylor, who serves as the Pennsylvania East State Coordinator for Delta Sigma Theta. So we will turn the program over to Patricia Williamson at this time.
Thank you so much, Marvetta. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Women's Month. I am so pleased to give you greetings from the Eastern Region Social Action Committee. Marvetta Coleman and Deborah Brady, my sorors, are two of 14 hardworking, energetic, dedicated social action coordinators on my committee, representing their 10 states, the Virgin Islands, and 7 countries in total. We are focused on political awareness and involvement, which is part of the 5-point programmatic thrust of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And what you will hear tonight is a powerful panel of women discussing the Pennsylvania Appellate Court. Many thanks to my sorors of Pennsylvania and our esteemed panelists for coming together to provide this informational event. Welcome.
Good evening. Yes, good evening. My name is Sonia Waters, and I'm president of the Harrisburg Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. It is my pleasure and honor to bring you greetings from the capital city, home of the Pennsylvania State Legislature and Commonwealth Court. I greet you on the occasion of tonight's virtual panel discussion, A Seat on the Bench, Black Women in the Appellate Courts. Pennsylvania's unified judicial system is one of the nation's oldest courts, dating back to 1684, with our Supreme Court being the oldest appellate court in the nation. Pennsylvania's judiciary history is longstanding, and it is more than ever important for Black women to have an active voice in the appellate courts. In recognition of March as being National Women's History Month, tonight's panel discussion provides a great opportunity for Pennsylvania residents across the state to hear firsthand from a phenomenal slate of Black women who are poised, prepped, and positioned to serve on the Commonwealth, Superior, and Supreme Court in Pennsylvania. Overall, the Pennsylvania judiciary is comprised of 30% female judges. 71% of Superior Court judges are women, and 67% of Commonwealth Court judges are women. However, it's long overdue, and now is the time for Black women to be represented in the appellate court ranks. Let each of us be mindful that it's up to each of us to be that change agent, the active participant in this upcoming elections, so that we too are represented in all levels of court. Thank you and have a great evening.
Good evening. On behalf of our Eastern Regional Director, Rosie Allen Herring, our Eastern Regional Representative, Nadej DeBrose, our Pennsylvania West State Coordinator, Dr. Chris White Taylor, our Pennsylvania East State Facilitator, Kayla Willis, our Pennsylvania West State Facilitator, Kiara Smith, and every chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated serving in the great state of Pennsylvania. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to this evening's virtual panel discussion. To members of Delta Sigma Theta, social action is and has always been a responsibility, not an option. Since our founding in 1913, Delta women have actively engaged and advocated against racism and discriminatory practices to bring about effective solutions to social challenges. And so it is in this spirit of service and hope that we remain steadfast in our commitment to the transformative change to educate and strengthen our community. The future of our democracy is in our hands. Collectively, we can change the narrative by elevating our voices and articulating a vision that is equitable, just, inclusive, and actionable. I extend warm sisterly greetings to our dynamic and distinguished panelists who have accepted this invitation to enrich our minds in ways that will support and engage us. I pray that you and your loved ones remain healthy and in hopeful spirits as we all work diligently to move through these most challenging times. Good evening, stay well, be blessed.
I want to thank each of our greeters who have brought us dynamic readings this evening. Thank you so very much on behalf of each of your respective roles. We certainly appreciate your providing such warm welcomes and enthusiastic ones. We will now have Linda Miller, who is a member of the Philadelphia Alumni Chapter, to bring forth our moderator. Linda?
Good evening, sorors and friends. I have the enormous honor of introducing our moderator for the evening. Ms. Bradford Gray is the Chief Defender of the Philadelphia Defender Association. For the past 5+ years, and I know the time has flown by, in that position, she has been the leading advocate for comprehensive justice system reforms. Ms. Gray has established partnerships with justice system stakeholders and community allies to advance client-centered representation, empower individuals to advocate for themselves at every stage of the system, and make our communities stronger and safer. Ms. Gray has been a successful defender of a high-profile case in 2019, and that was a catalyst for conversation about the importance of having well-resourced public defenders and helping remove the assumption that the justice system too often makes about people of color. Ms. Gray earned her law degree from Ohio Northern University School of Law and dedicated her career to public interest work, serving and leading the work in public defender offices in Philadelphia and Montgomery County. Ms. Gray serves on a number of boards and associations, but I will highlight the one I think is most important: Delta Sigma Theta Incorporated. Miss Gray was initiated at the Roe Chapter, Albany State University in the spring of 1994, and I am proud to call her Soror Gray.
Thank you so much, Soror Miller. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Delta Sigma Theta, for allowing me to moderate this amazing panel. I want to thank all these trailblazing women who are running for these offices for bringing attention to this extremely important and critical role in our system. I don't think many people really understand the power behind the pen that the judge holds and how it really impacts communities. So I am really happy we're having this conversation, because me, is being in all the wonderful accolades that Soror Miller gave me, being in this role for over 22 years, I really didn't have a full and thorough understanding of what each court did. I'm sad to say, but now we're having this conversation due to Delta Sigma Theta Social Action Committee, both East and West, and I am really believing that we're going to walk away with some really helpful information. So before we get to the panelists, I want to make sure that I welcome back Deborah Brady, because we are going to do a pre-poll to see how much we all understand about some of these appellate courts. And afterwards, we'll do another poll to see what we achieved in terms of educating everyone.
Thank you, Sor. We are now going to have our first poll, which is going to test your knowledge, and all answers will remain anonymous. So tech team, can you please post the poll?
The poll has been launched.
Thank you.
I think Soror Brady had a great time doing the research in terms of putting this pre-poll together, did you not?
I did, and it was a bit of a challenge because I didn't have the answers right off the top of my head, so.
Well, be that as it may, we know that our audience is probably already so knowledgeable about all three of these things. So I'll be looking forward to seeing what the answers show, won't you?
I sure will, I sure will. Are we ready, tech team? What do we have? Okay, so for the first question, we have, what types of cases are heard in the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court? 47% said civil, and 29% administrative, 24% criminal. For the second question, how many African-American women have been selected to the Pennsylvania Appellate Court? 67% said 1 through 3, 22% said 0, and more than 3 received 11%. For the third question, what is the total number of the appellate court seats in Pennsylvania? 51% said 9, 28% said 24, 10% said 31, and 11% was your guess is as good as mine. Well, we thank you very much for participating in our first poll. We do have another poll, as our moderator has explained. And at this time, I will turn this program back over to our moderator so we can get started. Thank you.
I just want to ask the question of Deborah or our moderator. Are you going to give the answers for the poll questions for our audience?
Oh, yes, definitely, of course. For our first question, for the Commonwealth Court, the cases that they hear is administrative. For those African Americans who have been elected to the appellate court, it was 1 through 3. And the total number of appellate court seats in Pennsylvania, 31. So we thank you very much. And now we will turn the program back over to our moderator, Ms. Kiera.
Thank
And
you so
before
much.
we do that, Attorney Gray, I am so sorry to interrupt you, But the rest of us are going to turn off our cameras who are not participating as one of your fantastic panelists. So we'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you, Sora Marvetta, and you can call me Sora Kier. All right, well, let's get into our conversation. But before we do, I'd love to introduce our, like I said, our trailblazing panelists. Ladies, I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. What you're doing is challenging, and I am just so honored to be able to have this opportunity to speak with you, but more so to know you. Many of you are friends of mine, and I'm just very proud of you. So let's start with the first person, Judge Lori Dumas, who is a judge in the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. Welcome, Judge Dumas. Attorney Amanda Green Hawkins, who is in our West Side, a sister over in the West. Welcome, Attorney Amanda Green Hawkins. Judge Tamika Lane, who is also a Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas judge. Welcome, Judge Lane. Judge Paula Patrick, who is also a Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas judge. Welcome, Judge Paula Patrick. And last but not least, Judge Sierra Street, also a Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas judge. Welcome, Judge Street. So before we start to get into conversation, I want to make sure that you know that while this is a conversation and not a debate, we'll be adhering to time limits for responses. So we want to allow for the inclusion for as many questions and discussions as possible. The panelists will be provided 2 to 3 minutes for each response. Marvetta Coleman will serve as the timekeeper. She will indicate by flashing a time marker at the 1 minute and 30-second wrap-up times. So that you guys will need to keep your cameras engaged during the conversation, please. If a question is allowed some additional discussion, we will give each person a 1 minute time period to follow up with that conversation so that we can keep things moving. The timekeeper will only flash at the 30-second wrap-up time point. Any other questions that will be coming through people that are watching? We'll go to a few people who will kind of look at them and make sure they're appropriate, because again, we want to make sure that this is not a debate. This is not an endorsement of any candidate. This is strictly an educational forum. So let's get into this evening's discussion. And we're going to start with just some education. While we did the poll to figure out what the courts do, I want to hear from the panelists some of the things and roles and responsibilities of the courts. So I'm going to start with asking Judge Paula Patrick. Could you please give me or share the roles and responsibility of the Supreme Court?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'd be happy to. Our Supreme Court, of course, is the oldest Supreme Court in the nation. And our Supreme Court listens to all types of appeals. We have 2 other intermediary appellate courts, the Superior Court as well as the Commonwealth Court. Commonwealth Court is more of a limited jurisdiction type of court where they don't take all types of cases that would come to, let's say, the Supreme Court, and some that flow through the Superior Court. But the Supreme Court is a bit different in that the Supreme Court only hears cases that really would impact the Commonwealth as a whole, maybe the lives of all of the citizens in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And it too is what we would call an error correcting court. That means that when the courts have ruled below, there is an appeal that goes either to the Commonwealth Court or the Superior Court. If they're not satisfied there, they can appeal to the Supreme Court. However, the Supreme Court must grant what is called allocator. That means that they will choose to hear the case if they believe that it will have a significant impact in what's happening in our Commonwealth. Now, the cases that are heard by the Supreme Court, criminal matters. In fact, right now, at least about close to 47-50% of the cases that are heard are dealing with capital cases, capital murder cases, habeas corpus petitions. They also hear all appeals that relate to the family court, juvenile court, cases that are heard in the civil court system, and even orphans court. So all these matters can come before our Pennsylvania Supreme Court, as well as we heard just last year, all statewide elections matters as well.
Thank you so much. May I have Judge Lane, can you please give me the roles and responsibilities of the appellate court? And remember, this is an education, so sometimes we as lawyers talking our legalese, if you can just give it to us in the most plainest form so that all of us can consume the information.
Yes, thank you so much, Soror Gray. So the Superior Court is, it's like Judge Paula Patrick just said, she talked about 2 intermediate courts. And okay, let me be more basic. Kira looking at me like, that's not what I said, Judge Lane.
I'm not saying that. Intermediate court. Give us an understanding of what that really means.
So currently I sit on the Court of Common Pleas, and that's our trial court here in Pennsylvania. So if you go to trial and you lose, then you appeal to the Superior Court. The Superior Court deals with criminal matters, civil matters, family matters, anything dealing with children, and even some things from orphans courts like wills or estates and things of that nature. The Superior Court is often the final stop for most people in Pennsylvania because the Supreme Court won't take up their cases. And 70% of those cases are criminal matters. And we know that that is very important, and it has impacted, Black and brown people. The Superior Court is a very important court, and they also travel like all the other courts. They sit in Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and in Pittsburgh. So it is a traveling court, just like all the other appellate courts as well. And there are 15 members on the Superior Court because of the sheer volume of cases. They hear at least 8,000 cases a year. All right, I got it. Thank you so much, Soror Coleman. Thank you.
Soror Coleman is on that time.
Yes, she is.
But let me add, the yellow is the 1 minute and the red is the 30 seconds. So.
All right. So does she have a couple of more seconds or no? Because I can't.
Does have a couple of more seconds.
Do you want to continue for your few seconds?
No, I think I gave the gist.
Okay.
And it is an error correcting court, so it is very specific that they're looking at errors from the trial court.
And that happens a lot, as we know in our courts. There are errors, and it is what it is. It's always a second look. So we have 3 women running for this next court. I'm going to ask Judge Lori Dumas to start off giving us an understanding of what Commonwealth Court, the roles and responsibility of Commonwealth Court. And then I will move to you, Honorable Judge Street, as well as you, Amanda Hawkins-Greens, for some other conversations and questions.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me as well. The Commonwealth Court handles a hodgepodge of different types of cases. For the most part, it handles our state and local governmental matters, cases that are dealing with all of anything that's regulated in Pennsylvania. So, our utilities, banking, insurance. It also handles cases dealing with the education of our children, the environment, the care for the elderly, and elections. I mean, it's really a court that touches all of our lives more so than I would say any other court that we have, because these are issues that we are dealing with, that we actually feel right in our households, in our communities. And they don't do any criminal cases. They don't do anything that deals with family court. It is a court really dealing with government, and this court ensures that the government does not overpower the voice of the people.
Thank you. That was your warning. I don't know if you had anything else for the 30 seconds. I don't know. Sorry, Marvetta. Whenever you put that yellow flag up, they just stop. But this is great. That's fine. Honorable Judge Street, can I ask you just to follow up on that? Because me as a private citizen, can I just go into Commonwealth Court if I have an issue with the utility company, or especially the gas company, whomever it is? How does that work in terms of how you get into your court and get your case heard?
Good evening, and thank you for having all of us, and great to be with you, Chair. As was previously stated, many of the appeals come from administrative agencies. So if you're having trouble with one of the utility companies, it would more likely start with an administrative agency. And then if there's an appeal, it would end up in Commonwealth Court. I wanted to add that the Commonwealth Court is about 50 years old now. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary last year. And that they do handle state probation and parole appeals, which I think would be of interest to you, Ms. Bradford Gray. So
only in for 2 weeks.
The question is not what do they do? The question is what don't they do? Because their hands are in everything. They handle school funding and some of the other items that Judge Dumas pointed out. And so they have a piece of everything, all of our quality of life issues, our bread and butter issues that affect our communities and that trickle down. And as usual, we are affected more greatly than other communities. And we, we're the community that doesn't really know that much about Commonwealth Court. And we're not represented on the Commonwealth Court. And that's why we're all here tonight.
Thank you so much, Judge Treat. And Amanda Green Hawkins, I apologize for messing your name up. Is there anything you would like to add about the Commonwealth Court? Because it's such an interesting jurisdiction. And I don't think many people do know about this court and the roles and responsibilities. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I would also add that for those who said that the Commonwealth Court handles administrative, yes, they're correct. Does it handle civil? I think that those people would be correct as well, because in the court's original jurisdiction, in those matters concerning election law, in those matters concerning employment discrimination or discrimination in housing or public accommodation, the Commonwealth Court is also the court where those matters can be heard after a person files a complaint at the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. And so because this court is so vast, it deals with so many issues related to the government, related to licensing, and just our quality of life, as I've heard said previously. It's something that is extremely important. And I think everyone in Pennsylvania should have an interest in what goes on, and not just all Supreme Court, Superior Court, but particularly this court, because it's more like where the rubber meets the road.
Thank you. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Good luck with that. So I want to ask another question that really is going to get into why it is important to have diversity. So the Judicial Ethics Code states that rulings are based not on your personal opinion, but rather the law. And since this ethical canon governs your decision-making, why is it important to have a diverse representation on our appellate court? And how do you think the experiences of Black women enhance equity on those courts' decisions? I'm going to start with you, Judge Paula Patrick, because the Supreme Court is one, like you said, it's really hard to get there. So how do you believe that you will have the ability to bring some equity if you are selected to be on that court?
Well, first of all, I think all of us know that there's not anyone on that court that looks like any of us here today. In fact, there was only one African-American male, Chief Justice Nix, that passed, but he was actually elected to our Pennsylvania Supreme Court. We had one Justice Juanita Kidd Stout, that only served for about a year, and she was appointed, was not elected. And then we have, of course, a recent had Justice Cynthia Baldwin of Pittsburgh, and she was actually appointed, and she was there for about 2 years. So we have not had anyone else actually elected to that court since Justice Nix. And I say it's important for us to have diversity on the court, because the court should reflect the population of the people. There should not just be one understanding or one dynamic or one way of giving an interpretation of the law just based upon your background experience, but it should also include those of us who have not traditionally had a seat at the table. And we should certainly have the opportunity to come, to be a part of that court. Plenty of us have cases before that court, people that look like me and you. And so I think it's important, and I think the time is now that we elect someone who has the understanding, who has the background, the experience that would make a difference in terms of diversity. In fact, I was rated highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association, and they said this about me and like any other candidate, and that is, I'll say real quick, they said that they believe that Judge Patrick would serve with distinction on that court. And that's because there's no one else that's running that would qualify under that particular standard. So thank you.
Thank you. So I want to keep this in mind that we're doing an education. So we want to make sure we keep it to the basics of the question with respect to the functioning. But I want to go in deeper about this equity on the court, because some of the appellate courts, and I'm not sure if Commonwealth Court does this, but Judge Lane, you said the appellate court has panels of 3. How do you, as an African-American woman, have an impact on the decisions if you're only one of 3 people?
That is an excellent question. And sometimes they actually send in panels of 9 if a case or an issue is so important. But most of the time, you're right, there are panels of 3. And it is important that no matter what room you are, even as a judge on a court of common pleas, I am always vocal in expressing my opinion. And I think that the same would be here. I would bring a different viewpoint, because when we elect judges, we elect their professional experience, but we also who they are. That also comes to the table in our real life experience. And I'm going to give you just a quick example. There was a case in which a witness testified, and this was in Court of Common Pleas. And the witness said, they asked how long had this been going on? And the witness said, oh, it's been going on for about a minute. And so the district attorney interpreted that as literally 60 seconds a minute, where we know that as an African-American, a minute really could be a long time. Well, that was going on for a minute. So I think when you bring us, we bring a different perspective, and that's one that we are very vocal in expressing to make sure that everyone has that understanding. And that's why diversity is so important. And to only have one African-American person on all three of the appellate courts, and that's Judge Carolyn Nichols, it's time for a change. And that's why we're all here and trying to make sure that people are aware of what the courts do and why they're so important.
Thank you for that. I think you said something so important, like, the interpretation of the language is important when we have the background and experience and understanding of that culture, just like lawyer dog. Remember in Louisiana, it had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to interpret why someone said, or what they meant when they said, I want a lawyer dog. They thought they meant a real dog that was a lawyer. That's where we are right now. So Amanda, can I call you Amanda, or would you prefer me to use the full name?
Amanda is fine.
All right, Amanda.
Mother, just fine.
Now, I'm not sure about Commonwealth Court, but in terms of equity, in terms of bringing what you bring to the table, how would you be able to do that with respect to Commonwealth Court, where we're not talking about the cultural aspects of criminal law and things like that? We're talking about administrative hearings. So how would you do that?
Right, well, we're talking largely, certainly largely administrative hearings. And my background is steeped in administrative law, working with the largest industrial union in our country. It's been the backbone of my experience at the federal and state level at administrative agencies across the country. And I'm also working with a very diverse workforce, and I'm bringing my diverse background and perspective to it as well. And I think anytime you have someone bringing diversity, not just of race and age and gender and all of that, which are certainly important, but also diversity of background, it enriches the discussion about what justice and fairness should look like. There's currently no one on that court with an extensive background in labor, and I will certainly bring that, I'm certainly able to bring that perspective. But diversity absolutely means nothing to me without inclusion. Inclusion of those voices, valuing those different voices to add to the discussion and actually perhaps cause some reevaluation of what justice and fairness should look like, is what it's really about.
Thank you for that. Judge Dumas, I want to pose the same question to you to see if, what you talk about in terms of equity and how you would be able to bring, if you were selected to be on those courts, things that are equitable in your decision-making for this particular court as well.
So we know that the lack of diversity really, it evidences a lack of diverse perspective, but that robs the judicial process of a full understanding of the issues that are unique to people of color. And, when that happens, then a judge's ability to really enter orders that are not just rooted in the law, but also are representative of the uniqueness of different people, of people that don't look like us, that are not from the same places, that are, even partisanship would be a diversity that all of us would bring in, any of us that are running for this court, because the court is the majority of the Republicans. And so there's so much diversity, and you need that because, when you have a judge that is ruling, on a case, as Judge Lane said earlier, you want not just a scholar of the law, but you want that whole person, and you want the person that, has the ability to see the whole picture. And, the different areas of law, though they're administrative in nature, the cases that come from the local and the state agencies, the subject matter are the same subject matters that we handle in our civil courts already. So the banking, insurance, and those civil matters are the matters that we're already doing. And so I think that coming to the bench and being able to talk about a perspective that the rest of them do not have, coupled with the experience from the court, just is a win-win. And it really, in this court, it's 9 of us that actually go, we decide together as a unit. So that's going to be really different. But I think that it will, bringing our perspective as Black women and Black jurists, and mothers, and, everything, all that we come with, that can only enhance the court and make it better.
Thank you. And Judge Street, you know, I didn't realize, and I think this is the first time that you can hear cases in panels of 9. There have been studies about the ability and effect of persuasion when there's one person that is different than the others that can actually enhance the quality of thinking. Can you talk about how that may be, how your perspective may be used to influence the other judges on your court if you are selected to be on that court?
Well, first of all, I'd like to reiterate that diversity only strengthens our institutions. And that's why when there's a lack of diversity, our institutions are weaker. And the public's confidence in our judiciary is weakened when we don't have diversity. When people don't see themselves or reflected in our courts, they don't have confidence in what we're doing in the courts. And so, you know, having a judge that comes from a different perspective, and we know that of the 9 members right now, there are 7 Republicans, 2 Democrats. There's only 1 judge from Philadelphia. There are no judges of color. And so we know that that court is lacking diversity in many different ways, not just, you know, in ethnicity. And so, you know, me being a Black woman from Philadelphia who would bring that perspective, have children gone through public schools here, you know, we're talking about issues of school funding that they handle. That's unique because most of the people on that court, even the one from Philadelphia, probably couldn't even speak to having a child go through the public schools. I know Judge Seisler very well, but I did that. And so, you know, that's a unique perspective that I would bring. Being persuasive over, you know, the other judges, I think that, you know, we, as judges, we are, you know, we're used to listening to our own voices, especially those of us who come from the trial court, the lower court, and we are, you know, it's our courtroom and we are the ones making the decision. So that definitely will be a difference being on an appellate court and working with the other judges. But I think that, you know, I've talked to some of them, they want diversity. They want more unique perspectives on their court. They know that that they're not balanced. We need a fair and balanced court. We all want that. We want a fair and balanced court, period. And you can only have that if you reflect the community that you serve, that comes before you. And that's why so many of us have chosen to run for the Commonwealth Court in particular. And that's why I chose to run for the Commonwealth Court, because I know that the diversity is lacking on that court in particular. And those issues affect us more than they affect other communities.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation is making me extremely more interested in Commonwealth Court than I've ever been before. So thank you for this, because it just sounds like it really does touch and affect everything that we deal with every day. And so I think that's remarkable that you guys are pushing to go to that court. So I know for a fact, women of color really have a hard time with statewide races, you know, indicative of why there's so few on these statewide elected positions. Are there unique considerations or challenges that you feel Black women seeking offices, particularly state offices, confront? And can you explain and elaborate on what those are? I will start with Judge Lane. Not to put you on the spot, Judge Lane.
I think every woman on here can attest to the challenges running statewide. But we're all out here and we're doing it. And the benefit is that we actually have each other. We're not out here alone doing it. There are definitely challenges. Historically, we don't come from money. You know, some candidates are self-funding or their family are funding them. Sometimes everyone doesn't embrace this idea of diversity. There are so many challenges, but what I can say is that we've been all across the state, and overall, I think that we can say that it's been a good experience. And if we want to be on a court that is statewide, it's best that we know Pennsylvania and all 67 counties. And I think that's the beauty of running. But historically, we have challenges raising money. For my race for Superior Court, it's like $1.52 million to run.
Ooh.
Yeah, these races are very expensive. And I don't think people understand how much it costs to run statewide. And I really think that I could defer to Amanda Hawkins Green, because she ran a whole year and she can really attest to it much better than I, if you don't mind if I defer to her.
You know what, that's a great segue. Amanda, can you give us some more insight about some of the challenges that Black women face running for statewide offices?
I will do my best, but I'm going to see those color panels shortly, I'm sure, because I have so much I can say about this.
That's all right. We got some time, Sarah Coleman, right?
In 2019, I did run for a Superior Court, and it was lonely. out here. I was the only woman of color running statewide. It is wonderful to be running this year with so many women of color, with everyone here tonight. And just like Judge Lane was saying, it is very expensive to run statewide. And that is a deterrent to many people, the cost of running. Also, the time away from, and this is pre-COVID, of course, but time away from home, time away from family. If you're going to run, you got to do it right. And it requires traveling. And I hit 63 counties out of our 67. And I spent a lot of time away from my family, a lot of time away from home at different events on the campaign trail. It can be exhausting if you're trying to work, because many of us cannot afford to take a leave from work and run for a statewide office. So that can be stressful and challenging and all of that. There's so many concerns. And as I'm saying this, people may be thinking, so why in the world would you do it, right? Why in the world would you do it? But it's important that we do it, because we could sit at home and complain that there's no one who looks like us on the bench, or only one person who looks like us on the bench, that the people are biased, they don't have the right temperament and all of that. Or we can pick ourselves up and try to be the change that we want to see. And as we go through our Zoom meetings on a campaign trail, we talked about this, we mentioned this just about every night, being the change that we want to see and stepping up, putting ourselves out there to help be a part of this judicial system, and to add our perspectives, to add our voices and everything that we can bring to the table to make sure that justice and fairness look and sound a lot like all of us.
All right, you got that red flash. I want to go to you, Judge Paula Patrick. Why is it so expensive to run these statewide races? Is there like some mechanic or some methodology between how much money you have to spend? Can you enlighten us on why it costs so much?
Well, it costs so much to run because, as Amanda said, this is a statewide race, and you have to get your face, your message out to as many people as possible around the state. So when you look at the campaign literature, from posters to digital campaigning and perhaps TV, because this is really a rural state, Pennsylvania is. And so, you'd have to be able to connect with as many voters as you can if you're campaigning. And it's difficult to do in rural environments because, as you know, people don't really know judges. And so they have no idea who's running. We call these off-year elections, and people just, go and blindly and vote for judges. So if judges are to be elected and seek to be elected, you're going to have to raise the money to be able to put your name out. That's why I believe it costs so much, because you want to make sure that people at least have touched you in some way, either through a mail or either through some ad or some way that they could get your name out. And then I just want to add too real quickly, when you talk about some of the challenges to us being, people of color, we also deal with the challenges in our own respective political parties, because historically, it has not been, really, across the board for us to be, quote, their endorsed candidate or to be the one that they would put faith in. Because, we come and we seek to be involved in the party politics. And sometimes, we're not really accepted to the point where they will even, let's say, quote, trust us enough to even endorse us. I think all of us on here have probably experienced that on some level. The other thing is that, obviously, there are challenges to raising money when you are especially a judicial candidate. And I think it's even more if you are a female or even somebody of color. And so it's important that we get the message out as much as we can. And just like Amanda was saying too, we have to get out here. If you have a passion to make a difference and to see the change, then of course you put yourself out here, and all of us are doing that.
Thank you. Judge Street, what Judge Paula Patrick just said in terms of your own party having some bias against you, how does that, how do you overcome when your own party does not want you to run, but you feel like you have a need to do it? And what do you have to do? What impact does that have? And I didn't ask that strategically. I'm just asking you.
Sure.
I promise you. I just thought about it as you were smiling. I'm like, okay. But anyway.
I definitely have experience in that world. So, okay, so the Democratic Party is not monolithic, right? So there's so many different factions of the Democratic Party. And that's what's beautiful about it, but it also creates a situation that can become very confusing and sort of chaotic sometimes. And, you know, in the Democratic Party, some will try to choose who they think should be the nominees, and they want the voters to choose those people as well. But we know that the democratic process, that the voters get to choose, regardless of, you know, who's endorsed by whoever. The voters at the end of the day, that's, you know, as judges, we take the oath to uphold the Constitution. That's what the Constitution says. The voters make the choice at the end of the day. So the endorsement process is what it is. It's not always pleasant. It's not easy. And that's also expensive too, the endorsement process. That's part of the money, right? And so, you know, it is what it is. It's something, I don't think that money or parties should deter people from running. I think that, you know, if you let that speak to what you're going to do, then there are always going to be the same people and the same kind of people running, and you won't get new fresh faces in the Democratic Party or new fresh faces in leadership. You know, when you look back to Barack Obama when he ran, he wasn't the party favorite at all. He wasn't. He was the party outsider. You know, a lot of people don't remember that. And if he had chosen, you know, just to sit down because he didn't have the party's backing, and I mean a lot of Black people in the party, then we wouldn't have had the first Black president. Sometimes people have to buck the system to get us ahead.
I hear that. And Judge Dumas, even when having the party endorsement, there, like others have explained, there are going to be certain counties in Pennsylvania that are just not welcoming for us. How does the party help you overcome that, if they can at all? And if not, what do you do?
So I really think that it's a village effort. You know, I'm one of those people that, you know, believes that collaboration and all hands on deck really provides a better opportunity to be successful. I can't really, I've never run statewide. So this is truly an experience for me. And so I really can't attest to what the party can help do or not help do. What I will say is that you can't take anything for granted. Any relationships that you have, it's good, but you can't take anything for granted, and you have to run like you're running for your life if you really want to win. And you know, while it's helpful to have people who will carry your water for you in those places where, you know, you can't be, or, you know, I remember when Judge Patrick ran, you know, when she ran, and I know that, you know, I learned from her, there were certain places that she had to have posters that didn't have her face on them, right? Just her name, because there were some places that her posters probably would have never even gotten up if they had her face on them, because hate is just that pervasive in a lot of the places in Pennsylvania. But all I can say is that, you know, I would say that if our culture, if our you know, if us, we people of color really understood the importance of our courts, and really wanted to make, you know, or understood how important their support of their candidates are, I think that we would have a better opportunity to really compete differently. But we have to just continue to help people to understand, our people to understand that we need us in those seats. And in order to get in those seats, we need our community support, and we need them to believe in us and to trust us that when we get there, that we're going to do what we're supposed to do.
Thank you for that.
Do you mind if I just piggyback on that? Because Judge Dumas really just touched me when she said that.
It's a conversation. Let's go.
No, because in running for this position, people told me that I would have problems statewide. They said, you're too dark. And then as I'm in this race, they said I need to consider changing my name. They said Tamika's not going to win. And I really had people, they want me to go by Tammy Lane. And I'm like, no, I'm going to win or lose as Tamika. And so I think that is something unique to us when we run. And I just wanted to put that out there, because we're dealing with the political stuff, but then you had to deal with all the other stuff. But we as Black women already know this. I'm not saying anything that we don't know.
No, I think this is important, because many people may not think that when you're running for these roles, especially being judges, that you get the same type or confronted with the same type of stereotypical racial bias that we all have in our everyday lives. And so that alone is really critical. I would never think that anyone would think that you should change your name to run, because what would that end up as? You're elected as Tammy, and then all of a sudden you're on the bench as Tamika. So that's interesting.
Wow. Soror Gray, we have loads of questions in the
Oh, we
Q&A, and I know that we can't answer all of the questions received. We'd like to add a few to the conversation if you do not mind.
No, I not.
Okay. One of our first questions is a two-part question, and it's around the Commonwealth Court. And so our audience members want to know, what is the annual caseload at the Commonwealth Court, and can Commonwealth rulings be appealed to the Supreme Court? If any of our panelists would like to answer, go right ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, you go ahead, Amanda. Go ahead.
The Commonwealth Court gets about 4,000 cases filed in it each year. And yes, indeed, decisions can be appealed to the Supreme Court. We certainly saw that with the election decision last year about whether or not our mail-in ballots would count. The decision was no at the Commonwealth Court level, and it was appealed to the Supreme Court, and they said yes, which is why the election turned out the way it did.
Wow, that's interesting. Judge Dumas, did you want to answer as well?
I think that they actually, the caseload is a little more than that, Amanda. I think Amanda always talks about how about 4,000 of those cases are the kind of cases that she does. The administrative appeals. I thought that during the last, and you know what, maybe it is because I looked at the annual report, and so maybe that accounts for a couple of years in one. So in the last annual report, it was about 12,000. So that roughly, if it's 3 years, it could be about 4,000 a piece. So I stand corrected, my sister. I'm sorry. But yeah, but as far, yes, but definitely as it relates to Supreme Court. Those decisions are decisions that do go there, and our elections, as she said, definitely this last time, they bailed us out because our voices would not have been heard in this last election, but for the Supreme Court.
Wow, that's a great example, something that all of us can actually relate to because it's so recent. Another question from the audience.
May I add on something to that,
Yeah.
Tiffany? Because I'm also running for Commonwealth Court.
Absolutely. Add on.
Thank you. Just quickly, I just want to say that the Supreme Court often reverses the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court and saves us. And so they did it with the election case last year. They also did it with the landmark gerrymandering case that also started out in the Commonwealth Court and ended up in the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And because the court is so unbalanced, they often reverse the Commonwealth Court.
Wow.
Thank you. How does someone position themselves to be considered for appointed versus elected judicial positions? And that question is for any panelist.
I would just jump in on that, and I would simply say, again, it goes to the level of politics. And I say that because, we know in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we do have some quite intelligent jurists of color, but the governor is the one that does the appointments. So unless, the governor is aware of you in some way, shape, form, or fashion, the Senate, of course, approves the appointment. So that process is a bit different from the electoral process, because I think it was Judge Dumas that said, or Judge Street that said about, why elections are important, because the people get to choose, as opposed to the governor who would appoint and the Senate who confirms. And so that's a different process altogether. And really it's a very highly political process when it comes to, being appointed for these courts. The other thing is that when you're appointed, you're only appointed for a specific time, generally to fill out that tenure prior to the election, because judges are elected every odd year. We had elections in 19, we have elections now 21, another one in 23, and so forth. And so if you're appointed during the interim, you must still run. If you are permitted to run based upon the agreement for the appointment, you must run in that next open election. And so all those factors, really vary depending on who's the governor that appoints you, when the Senate approves you, and the terms that you work out for the appointment, whether it's for a limited time or or you're going to sit and then run for that 10-year term.
Thank you. Tiffany,
Thank
any
you.
other questions?
We do have a few more, but I'll turn it back over to you right now, and then we'll come back to the audience questions. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, I want to really talk about, because we are all Black women and we are running, well, you, not me, running for this statewide seat. And really, this is one, we're in a civil rights moment. And this is the moment that diversity, equity is really infused into so many functions of our government. But really, I want to ask you guys, how do you view the terms fairness and equity? And is there a difference when it comes to applying them to the law? And I'd like to hear all of your responses. So I will start with you, Amanda. Can you please give us an understanding of how you view fairness and equity, and how is there a difference in the way you apply it with the law?
For me personally, fairness and equity are about not just what happens in our judicial system. I see it as everything that touches our lives. So it's about fairness in employment, with housing, with education, with access to justice, access to all the things that we need and want to live our lives and participate fully in our economy. And there's certainly going to be different in the way that I perceive it and in the way that it's applied with the law, because we're looking at applying the law as it has been explained through precedential making decisions. And that's what the job is first and foremost, is to be fair and to apply the law. And sometimes the law isn't going to, when applied to a set of facts, isn't going to render the decision that I want, or that the litigants want, perhaps. However, I think through the power of the pen, what the judge can also do is make sure that the voices and perspectives that aren't part of that decision are also recorded and memorialized for history's sake, but also for the sake of those who want to see change in the future. And they can look at these decisions, look at these writings, and pull these arguments and perspectives from these writings in order to take those arguments to the court or to the legislature for a different outcome.
Okay, I want to remind you to make sure you watch Ms. Sarah Coleman when she gives you the flash, so that we can make sure everyone gets a chance to discuss it. Judge Dumas, oftentimes we know law is very traditional and old and doesn't catch up to society. And so how would you be more equitable? Fairness is an interesting term. How would you be how can you be an equitable judge using the traditions of the law?
Yeah. So, if we're talking Commonwealth Court, the error correcting court, first and foremost, you're looking at cases and you're making a decision as to whether any errors have occurred at the lower level, but then you have those cases, which is really what's exciting about the Commonwealth Court, is that you still get to be a trial court judge over there. And that's, you get an opportunity to really, when you talk about equity, you're talking about lots of times those gray areas, like you have the law and then you have the gray areas, right? And it's those gray areas where who you are at your core is where that really plays out. And so for me, equity is making sure that there's access to justice, making sure that people's voices are heard, and making sure that I am courageous enough to make decisions that may not necessarily be popular, but they are right because they are the right thing to do.
Thank you. Judge Street, do you have anything to add to that? Because this is an area that you're looking at as well to join that court. And, just like Amanda said, sometimes the law, slavery was legal. So when Thurgood Marshall was making decisions about whether to give property to indigenous people, he had to rule against them because it was the traditions of the law. But we do know the law sometimes catches up to society when the society pushes it. So how do you feel like you would be able to instill some equity into that court?
I think that the law has saved us, so many times. And so even though the law takes a while to catch up, we have been saved by the law. We as Black community been saved by the law in so many instances. And so the law is ever changing. And that's one of the reasons why I went into law, because it's not a finite area. It's always changing, and it does respond to the times. But I agree with Judge Dumas when she says that you bring your whole self to the bench with you. But you also have to recognize that we all have implicit bias. And so, we hear that term a lot, and you have to recognize that you have it first to manage it. And so you bring yourself to the bench, you recognize that you have these biases, and you try not to let them insert themselves into your decisions, but you try to make the best decisions you can. My judicial philosophy is really to help as many people as I can, help those who can be helped. In every case, some cases you can't help anybody. But if that's what that's what I stand by. I'm trying to help as many people no matter what. And so it doesn't matter what you look like, who you love, or where you came from. I'm going to try to help you if I can, And so fairness and equity means being impartial. You have to make sure, thank you, Ms. Coleman. You have to make sure that everyone, as I said, is treated equally, make sure that you are not inserting your own bias into your decisions, and also not being afraid to be different. I also agree with that. And so looking different is fine, but not being afraid to be different is the most important thing as a judge, I think. And you do have to have the courage to do that at the end of the day. And that is difficult.
I agree with you. And Tamika, Judge Lane, Judge Lane, I want to follow up on that, because your role in your court looks at the decisions that are coming up from, most of the times, the county courts, the Court of Common Pleas. And here's where I tend to differ, where I believe law is pushed to transform into where society is by activists, by policy, by all the things that are going on in its society. It doesn't just do it on its own. How could you bring some more equity into the court that you would be sitting on, the appellate court, of course, with a panel of other judges? Because this is really, we're electing people based on their background and experience, but it seems like they're limited in their ability to do different things.
But I think you've already had the judges alluded to it. Even though the Superior Court is a different court than the Commonwealth, I think that applies across all of the courts. I think it goes from the Supreme Court to the trial courts. I think that same philosophy applies, and especially with these like Superior Court, when we actually sit in panels and discuss things of that nature, or we will have submit panels. I think that that's where these conversations come into play. And I think that's why having a diversity of voices in that room is very important. And I feel like I would be repeating what they said, because they really hit the nail. They really hit it out the park. The judges who already spoke about it.
So that's sisterhood. I love that. Thank you, Judge Lane. We'll come back to you with a different question so that you can answer and show it.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be redundant, because Marvetta's quick with a card. So
that's right. Just as long as we look at her. Judge Paula Patrick, I do want to ask you something different, because I think Judge Dumas has touched on it. People don't know how powerful these positions are. The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania is a very powerful court. And can you please explain why? I mean, many people think that the legislation makes all the laws that govern and rule the land. Can you explain how powerful the Supreme Court's decisions are in terms of how the rest of society functions once there's a ruling?
Yes, the Supreme Court is the court really of final jurisdiction. In other words, I'm sorry, that is, whenever it comes before the Supreme Court and they make a decision, that's the law of the land in Pennsylvania. There's no other authority to appeal to or to get that changed. When the Supreme Court makes a ruling, that's it. Unless
as the governor, can I just say this? So if I'm the governor, I can't do anything about what you rule on?
No, unless our U.S. Supreme Court, if it's appealed there and they accept it, then they would make certain decisions. But really, it is the court really of last resort. And once the Supreme Court has made a ruling, that's it. So clearly, it's a very powerful position. But also, I think it's important too, because it is so powerful, that we have justices there that actually, follow the law and apply the law. You had talked about the concept, I wanted to say this really quickly, of fairness and equity. And I think a little differently from my colleagues here. I do believe that, judges should to be fair and equal on some basis. But I think the main thing is that, when people come to court, people look for justice. And I think that justice is a bit different from fairness. You can be fair and yet not just. And so I think that the law mandates that we as jurists make sure that justice is done. Whenever people come to court, one side is going to be disappointed. That's a fact. And so for us to want to seek to be fair and seek to create something or seek to put something that's there or even legislate from the bench, I think that's not our role. I think that our role should be to, as judges, we are to interpret the law, and our legislature, their job is to, make our laws. And so I think as a judge, it's important for us to keep that in mind as well, that when people come to court, they look for justice, and we as judges must be interested in giving justice despite how somebody else may feel about it.
And can I just chime in? Just about the Supreme Court and how they can just be more equitable as well, is that They have so much power. Yes, you heard Judge Paula Patrick talk about how it's the final say in the Pennsylvania Constitution, but they appoint to all these boards. There are so many boards in Pennsylvania, and the Supreme Court, they make those appointments, and it's huge, and it matters.
And I want to say to what Judge Lane just said, I think it's very important as well. We just see the side of the law for the Supreme Court, but there are other functions of our Supreme Court. And as she said, they are the court that actually appoints for a lot of the boards that we may know about and the public may not be aware of. And
what kind of boards? What kind of boards?
Well, you have the Judicial Conduct Board, you have the Court of Judicial Discipline, you have, the Disciplinary Board for the attorneys, all these things. And if you look at it, a lot of these boards lack diversity. And that's important because these appointments, a lot of them do come out of our Supreme Court. Once again, it goes back to what Judge Dumas was saying too about us, being there, at the table so that we're able to assist in some way to make a difference. Because one perspective is not always the best perspective. And people need to understand that there are other groups and races of people around the entire Commonwealth that should be represented on that court.
Thank you. I want to ask you this question for Women's History Month and just for Black women across the state and across the country. As women, and as we see more Black women running for office, sisterhood becomes the epicenter of power. How can Black women model and exemplify it to support each other and other women when running for office? Because like you said, these are hard races, but we as women sometimes are often running for the same position, but sometimes we also need our sisters, our fellow sisters, support us once they got to where they are. So Judge Lane, can you talk about how we can exemplify that spirit of sisterhood and support for one another from your vantage point?
Yeah, I benefit from it on a daily basis. The women on here have been a huge support system. And because oftentimes we're juggling so many Zooms or we're doing so many things as statewide candidates that if I'm not somewhere, Judge Dumas will text me, where are you? Or Amanda will call me like, did you know about this program? Like, we all communicate and we really are helpful to each other. And when we have bad days, when someone's like, you need to be Tammy Lane, who else can identify but the people out here running with me? And I think it's just such a blessing. And I think that when we are out and about and on these Zooms, we have been really collegial and supportive of one another overall.
And Judge Street, can you give us some examples or understanding of how we can be more supportive as women running for offices and women who are already in positions of power so that other women like myself or whomever else is listening to this can say that, I may be able to step out there and do this one day?
Well, first of all, Kara, when you mention yourself, I look to you as an example of somebody who's been able to be unapologetically ambitious, but not step on other women while moving ahead. And so I think that's something that we all can work on. I'll be the first to say that I can work on that. But I think that you're a prime example of somebody who's done very well. And I don't know of an instance where you have participated in anything like that. And so you're a great example yourself. As far as people, I mean it. Thank you. As far as people who are running for office and supporting those who are running for office, listen, there are a lot of candidates who are running for, I can look to maybe some of the CP candidates I'm running into on the trail. I've been through what they've been through. And so it is heartwarming to be able to talk to them about their journey and, sort of help them through, whatever it is that they're going through. And so that's been a good experience for me. Also, meeting people from around the state outside of Philadelphia has been a great experience as well, because everybody's different. But, a lot of times people say, well, you run statewide, people are not going to be that friendly to you outside of Philadelphia. And I've actually found the exact opposite. People have been pretty friendly and warm. And so it's been a great experience running statewide as far as having support and camaraderie with people outside of Philadelphia. But, you have to reach back. You have to do what people have done. I've had a great network of support. I have judges, I have people calling me and giving me, different pointers and whatnot that I didn't ask for. And I really appreciate that. I really appreciate it. You'd be surprised, you're surprised when you run, you don't know who's going to be with you and who's not. It's kind of like the people who you thought were going to be with you or not, and the people who you didn't think were going to be with you are the ones who are actually supporting you. It's kind of ironic, but you just learn as you go along. And definitely running is more than a notion. And this question that you pose certainly is not easily answered. But as I said, I think that you're a great example of someone who supported other women while you moved ahead.
Thank you so
Score
much.
Gray, the comments and the questions are rolling in. We have questions from folks asking for clarification from some of the things that the panelists have already said
All
to
right, let's get it in. Yes.
career day requests. So let me try to field some of these questions here. Can one of the panelists restate which appellate court positions will be on the ballot for May and how many candidates we can select?
Can we go to some of the ones that we didn't hear from just there? Maybe Dumas or Amanda or just.
Yeah, so there's one position open for the Supreme Court, which is what Judge Patrick is running for. One position open for the Superior Court, which is what Judge Lane is running for. And there are 2 positions open on the Commonwealth Court, and that's what Judge Street and Amanda and I are running for. And then there'll be local judges, so your common pleas judges, and in Philadelphia, maybe some of your municipal judges, and also in some of the counties, some of your magistrate district judges. So this is a judicial election. So judges all across the state will be running, but those appellate courts, the seats are very slim. 1 up top, 1 underneath, and then 2 on this side for Commonwealth Court. But I have to just say really quickly, because I didn't get to the sisterhood question, because that's my thing. That is,
Yes.
all I want to say is when Kira, you asked about, what is it, how can we be supportive, or what can we do? Just do it. That's my thing. I just want us to do it, because I'm a firm believer that we do not have to. Our lights are not dimmed because somebody else's light is shining. And if you carry that with you every single day, it won't be hard to support another sister, no matter what she's doing, no matter where she's from. And, and it's all of us are leaders here. Every one of us on this call, even and in the audience as well, are leaders. We have an obligation to support another sister or sisters. That's who we are. That's what we're supposed to do. And so for me, it's just like, just do it. Let's stop asking. Let's just be supportive. And it doesn't always have to look the same, but just support as opposed to not.
That's right. What's for me is for me, right? That's the motto to live by. Amanda and Tiffany, I know that people had questions. I wanted to see if anyone else wanted to answer the sisterhood question, because this is the spirit of sisterhood. However, I don't want to lose out on some of the information that the audience wants to hear. So does anyone briefly want to touch upon the sisterhood question? Because that is so critical. We say this is the year of the Black woman, and hopefully the pendulum doesn't swing too quickly. So, but we want more Black women to be supportive and be out there to run for these offices, but it's hard and it's scary.
When I think about it, I also think about feminism, which is about, women doing anything and everything that they want and having access to things, the same as men and all of that. And it's usually from a cultural lens that isn't Black centered, African American centered. And so when I find myself in rooms with, white feminists, everything's good until we're both trying to achieve the same thing or go after the same thing. Then the next thing you know, it's like, wait, where's the feminism, right? They're coming after me just about as hard as anybody else would. And my brand of feminism is not just about myself being empowered, but it's also about others around me being empowered, other women, particularly women of color, being empowered, and also doing what I can to help uplift them and help to get them to where they want to be as well. So, I don't have to win the race in order to support someone else, because I know that it's not about me. This is a big picture stuff, right? My parents grew up in Jim Crow segregated South and have all kinds of stories to tell that I don't, but I know that it's important to make sure that the next generation is telling stories different from the ones that I tell as well. And we only get there if I'm helping to uplift those who are around me.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And I think, Tiffany, did you have Judge Paula Patrick? I'm sorry, I didn't go to you, but I know that there's plenty of questions that they want you guys to answer. Many of them are talking about how awesome you all are, and thank you for the information. Judge Paula Patrick, would you mind if we go to a question that you could answer from the audience?
Sure, go ahead.
Tiffany?
Sure. And since we're talking about sisterhood, what advice would you give young women who want to pursue careers in your fields?
Well, the advice that I would give them is go for it. I mean, if you're interested in doing it, do it. I also would say, seek out a mentor, someone who's actually doing it, somebody, who would probably help you. I'll tell you, when I was a lawyer, one of the things that I did, because I started my own practice right out of law school at 25 years old. And I would get young girls from single parent homes, in urban Philadelphia, and they would be my file clerk. I would pay them to go and file documents and things for me. And in so doing, I became their mentor. I helped them go to college. I helped them come out of inner city Philadelphia. And those women today are successful in their respective fields. So I think that a lot of us would be willing to mentor and to help a lot of the young women. But I think a lot of them are just kind of afraid to ask or maybe don't know how to ask. And so that's why I think it's incumbent upon us to kind of reach back and to reach out to help. And I do so much mentoring with women and with young kids. It's just amazing. And I do believe that there's no way that you can be a leader unless you are really a servant first. So I'd say go after it if that's what you want to do, and seek out someone that you want to model yourself after that could probably help you.
Great answer. And I love the fact that you are willing to employ people while mentoring as well. That's a really great opportunity that many of us don't get. So thank you for that.
Along the lines of employment, can the panelists discuss the following? How can judges also ensure diversity of their staff? For example, hiring law clerks of color, law school interns of color. Can you discuss the role of being mentored by women of color in pursuing this path? So that's very similar to what Judge Patrick had already said. I think Judge Lane?
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. Yeah, it did. Thank you so much, Sora Wilson. And I think that is a great question, because a lot of times, unfortunately, when we see the diversity, it's because judges of color, because that's who we hire. We make sure that they have opportunities. And that goes from law clerks, your secretary, internships, and all of that. So that is very important. And that's why another reason why it's important to have a diverse appellate court, so that Black and brown people and marginalized people can have these opportunities. We don't always get those clerkships. We don't always get those same opportunities. And we also look at people from different pools of where we're looking. We don't recruit from some of those same pools. We expand the net to make sure that it's more inclusive. And I think that that is so important. And that was a great question. And what was the other part? Was it about a mentor, Tiff, or did I answer it?
I think it's been answered. Can you discuss
no,
the role of being
I better put
mentored?
the red card up. I'm done. I better put the card up real quick. I'm sorry.
Judge Treat, do you have anything you would like to add to that?
Well, mentoring is, key, and it's certainly for us coming from the backgrounds that we come from. Not all of us. I personally don't have any other lawyers in my family. And so I had to look for, mentors outside of my family unit to get me to where I'm at now, right? Because that's what I needed to do. And so many of us come from backgrounds like that. So mentoring is key, particularly in our community, because we don't have the infrastructure that maybe some other communities do of secondary educational professionals, generational professionals. So the mentoring becomes key. And of course, there's so many issues that we as Black women face that are just unique to us. And that's why mentoring between Black women is so important. And probably, the epitome of mentoring is between two Black women because of those unique issues. And so I've benefited from it. We all have. We wouldn't be sitting here without that. There's no way we could make it to where we are right now without that. So we owe it, and we have to give back. We have to do the same for everybody, for other people. Yeah.
Thank you. You know what? I think those are excellent conversations, because I remember when I was trying to figure out how to become a lawyer. It was my dream. I didn't know any lawyers. And I asked one of my professors at an HBCU, because I had never had a Black teacher before I went to HBCU, how do I become a lawyer? And she said, honey, just apply. I said, that's it. And it was so elementary. And I was so embarrassed that I didn't know that. But that is really, it's real for many of us who don't grow up around some of these professionals in these different areas, because we just don't know the path. And so I think those are really great conversations and advice to give people. I think we have time for one more question. What do you think, Sarah? We don't have time for one more question. Well,
I'm sad.
I know, and I'm so sorry for all the questions that weren't answered. We had such a riveting conversation. It was very educational information, but I think we're going to go back to the poll and do an exit poll to see if we have, I guess, enhanced our intelligence about these courts and the functions that they serve. So I will turn it over to Sarah Brady.
Wow, what a discussion. Woo, how do you follow that up? But we will follow it up with a poll. So at this time, as we have mentioned in the beginning, we will have just a few other short questions for you to answer. And that will be followed with some closing remarks from Dr. Christine White-Taylor, Dr. Penny Nixon, and Marvetta Coleman. Tech team, can you please post the poll?
The poll has been launched.
Thank you.
Brady, I think that they were probably expecting us to ask the same questions. However, we tricked you. We provided you with a whole new question.
That's right. Well, you got to keep it real. You got to keep it fresh, you know?
That's right, because we've gotten a lot of just incredibly good information.
Yes.
But in addition to the information, I think it's been the insights. The insights have been incredibly valuable as well.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay, so what we have for the poll results is that most of the people have learned something new, and the majority will share this information that they have learned here tonight. And we want to thank you for your participation. And now I'll turn it back to our moderator, Kier.
Thank you. So we're going to close with some final words of wisdom from the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 of you. And I would just ask, and how much time do they have to give this one, word of wisdom or one thought of wisdom? 1 minute. And so please pay attention to Sarah Coleman because she will be giving you the time. So I will ask you, Judge Lane, to start with the filing closing words of wisdom.
If you don't mind, I'll defer to Judge Patrick since she is running for the top court, Supreme Court.
Whatever you say. Come on, Judge Patrick, give us some final words of wisdom. She's doing this well with this deferring to folks, but that's
no, she's the pastor. Let's get it started off right.
Well, I would say that this is now our opportunity to change that court. And I think that this is the best opportunity to do it this year. I am the only person of color running for that seat. And I think it's time. I think it's time that we as citizens of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania say loud and clearly that we will no longer look to a court that does not reflect us and put someone on that court who understands the law, has the background, the experience to do so, and can hit the ground running from day one. So I'm excited about the possibilities. I'm looking forward to support, of course, getting through the primary. May 18th is the primary. And those of you who want more information about me, you can find out at votepaulapatrick.com. Again, that's votepaulapatrick.com. Also on Facebook at Judge Paula Patrick and on Twitter at Judge Patrick PA. Thank you.
All right, Kier, you ready for me now?
So I'm going to change the direction of this. There is one last question that I do want you to answer, and thank you for your words of wisdom, Judge Paula Patrick. But sorry, my vet is going to kill me. So this question: how can you use your service to enlighten others on the important role of the state appellate courts?
I love that because I use my service now on the Court of Common Pleas by going out into the community. I was co-chair of Advancing Civics Education with the Philadelphia Bar Association when we went into public schools and we taught civics. We are out there doing share and all kind of volunteer groups. We do gift of life. And I think first and foremost, it's important that people see us active. I was born and raised in a part of West Philly called the Bottom. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. And I didn't know judges or lawyers existed. I grew up wanting to be a secretary, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's noble work, but being a lawyer or anything that wasn't even on my radar. And when I went to go to college, the whole neighborhood rallied around. And that's why I think representation is so important, because I still go around my way because my family lives there. And we go to various communities and make sure that people know that we exist and what we do. And I think that is so important. But I also want to talk about the other question. I just want to tie it in real quick before Marvetta throws up a card on me. But I think
get it.
I think it's so important that when we leave here, we remember that our votes matter, our votes count. And we were celebrating Black women on November 4th, and we need to continue celebrating ourselves on December 4th, November 4th, January 4th, May 18th, and then again on November 4th. And we cannot forget that we are here and we are out here working hard every day to bring diversity and change to these benches, but we cannot do it without each and every one of you. So we need you, we need you, we need you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Judge Street, I want to go to you. Can you answer that question? How would you use your service to enlighten others about the important role of these state appellate courts?
And so being a judge has allowed me to marry all of my interests. One was community service. Coming from the Black community, I became a lawyer because I knew we needed more representation and less representation in the criminal justice system, by the way. But and so I love being in court. I love being a trial lawyer. And then so I became a trial judge, and now I'm able to, do community service on a much larger scale as a judge. And I'll bring that with me if I'm able to the next level. Serving the community. I mean, that is what fuels me. That's my passion. The Commonwealth Court is so important. That's why I'm attracted to this court, because it is about the community. And if you forget about what the Commonwealth Court does, just remember the 4 E's: education, employment, elections, and economics. And also, the Commonwealth Court is so special. We are the only state that even has a Commonwealth Court. There's no other state in the union or in the country that has a Commonwealth Court. That's how unique this court is. And that's why I'm so happy that so many people have decided to run for this court, because it is bringing attention to the importance in these issues. And my experience as first a trial attorney and now as a trial judge in all areas of the law speak to all of the diverse issues that this court handles. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Amanda, can you give us some parting words on how you would use your service to enlighten people on the role of these important courts?
Well, in my role as an attorney, I speak with people about the importance of the courts all the time, because many times I am making arguments, I am advocating for things that the law is not always on the side of my client, the union. And so I say, we have to look at the times that we're living in. We have to look at what's going on. We're living at a time when people are concerned about bias in our judicial system, and for good reason. We've seen an instance here in Allegheny County where there was a judge accused of making remarks that were racially inflammatory. And the allegations were made by attorneys from both sides. And when we see things like that, that undercuts our trust in our system. And we're also living at a time when we had thousands of people in our streets asking, is justice accessible or attainable for people who look like us? And we're living at a time when we have only one person, we've said it over and over again tonight, only one person of color in our entire appellate system. We know that there has to be some change. There has to be a change on some level. So educating people about the role of the court in light of the things that we're seeing coming out of our judicial system, I think is important, because I think it can also inspire people to get up and do something about it and be the change, help make the change that we all want to see.
Thank you. And Judge Dumas, wrap it up and send us home with your answer to that question, please.
So we are not in these positions by chance. I'm a firm believer that these seats are not jobs, that they are ministries, and that we have an obligation to serve from the bench, whatever that means. We have an obligation to create pipelines for our young people. We have an obligation to make sure that we are always doing what is right, that we are prepared, and that we are passionate about the work that we do. I don't take it lightly that I have the responsibility of people's lives in my hands. And we have to make sure that we are responsible, that we act responsibly, and that we never ever forget that we are public servants first, and that we are there to serve the people, plain and simple. It is not about glitz, glamour, nothing other than the people first. And that's what I want everybody here to know, that this is about the people. So we need you to allow us to continue to serve the people from a place that can really impact lives in a significant way. So thank you.
Thank you all for this conversation. Thank you all for your information, the education, your preparedness, and most importantly, thank you all for your courage. I think that you have sparked a lot of interest and a lot of desire to continue to keep understanding what these courts do, to continue to keep looking at you and what you're doing with your careers. We're all very proud. There's so many discussions in the chat. Blacks Excellent SORs continue to make us proud. Those of you who are not Deltas, part of Divine Nine, we still love you. God love to you, for you. But I will say this leaving. DST, thank you so much for this. Sarah Coleman, thank you so much for keeping us all on track. But these roles, these court positions, these judicial positions are extremely important. And like Judge Paula Patrick said, when they write, with the stroke of a pen, can change the whole dynamic of a Commonwealth, that is a position that you have to pay attention to. I know that many people didn't understand exactly how much power they control, but think about it like this. The reason why we have same-sex marriages and equality in the LGBT community is because the courts decided that, not legislation. The reason why DACA is available to people and dreamers that have come to this country in search of a better life that do not have to be deported is because the courts. And the reason why certain occupants of the White House think that their main mission is to stack that court is because they know how important and critical that role is in our society. So continue to pay attention, continue to follow these candidates, and definitely make the selection that you feel your heart should make. But wherever you make, I'm sure we'll all win because they are all stars. So thank you for your trailblazing attributes, and thank you again for being here with us. I will definitely turn this over for closing remarks from the other sorors. Thank you.
We will start with Dr. Chris White-Taylor, who is the Pennsylvania West State Coordinator.
I have to go with my first thought after seeing the panelists, and as also a former social studies teacher, United States history teacher, as well as having been a school administrator, I gotta say, wow, what a tremendous and impressive group of intelligent, and you know what, you're also kind of real foxy and sharp too, I gotta tell you that. So I want to wish you all well. I want to thank Sorors Brady and Coleman for such an outstanding dialogue this evening. Wishing you well. We're going to, on the Western Pennsylvania end, get to know a little bit more about Amanda Green Hawkins, who I believe is my neighbor. So having said that, best of luck and God's blessings to all of you. And once again, thank you for your courage, your willingness to step up and step out, and leave it up to us to help you get out the vote. Everyone have a tremendous evening. I'm sure that our Eastern Regional leadership will be beyond impressed. Good night.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Dr. Penny Nixon, who is the president of the Philadelphia Alumni Chapter.
I echo Soror White-Taylor with wow, what an inspirational conversation. And I also would like to thank tonight's attendees for attending the discussion. I want to again thank our esteemed panelists for the very informative and thought-provoking conversation. You have educated us tonight. And it is my hope that the information that you shared will inspire our attendees to continue to learn or relearn about the courts. You've also helped us appreciate the fact that we must have diversity on the courts. It's clear, sorors, that you are brilliant, knowledgeable, your expertise, passion, and commitment to provide the equity, access, justice, value, and fairness that people of color need and deserve on those courts is needed. So we thank you. I invite all of us to engage, act, and vote if we want change. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nixon. Thank you. This would not be an evening of education if we did not give you something to also take away in the form of concrete written information. So there was some inquiry regarding the sites for additional information. We hope that the list that is here will enable you to also then I'm sorry, we have a problem here. Here we go. Okay, there we go. We hope that the information that is on the screen now will be used by all that are on this event, and you will use this as a means of additional education, because the information that we have heard from all of our panelists this evening has been nothing short of giving us the kind of not just information and education that we need, but it should be giving us motivation. Black women's voices have been heard, and nowhere should they be more present than in our own state. I want to thank Soror Kier Bradford Gray for the tremendous job that she has done tonight as our moderator. We are greatly appreciative. Having sat in that seat a couple of times, it is no easy feat. So we just want to thank you for keeping things moving, for keeping things balanced, for keeping us all focused. Want to thank each of the panelists. You've brought, as I already have said, and so many have said, such great information, but we also applaud you for the role that you have stepped into, knowing that, again, it's not an easy job. However, one of the questions that was asked about sisterhood being the epic center. And what we want to do is to make sure that with that epic center, that we are, in fact, practicing what we're preaching. Want to thank all of those who have joined us in terms of our audience. Thank you so much. We would just be talking to ourselves were you not here with us this evening. So we want to thank you. Also, all of our leadership, our regional leadership, as well as our state leadership and chapters. Thank you so very, very much for joining us this evening. To my sister in advocacy, Soror Deborah Brady, thank you. We are going to put some other things together and really continue this work across the whole of the state. We bid you a great evening, a great week, and oh yes, we would not be doing our job effectively if we didn't remind you the date of the election is May 18th. So please make sure you've got it on your calendar. Please make sure that you are doing the work. Please make sure that you are sharing this information with someone. It was pointed out that non-presidential election years, the voting participation tends to decrease. We can change that. All we need to do is become part of the voice of saying, are you voting this spring? Are you voting on May 18th? Did you know there's an election? Are you registered to vote? Make sure you go out and start articulating that conversation with someone that may not understand the importance that this is a judicial election. Thank you so much, everyone. Good evening, good night. Oh, and one last thing. Thank you to the incredible Philadelphia Alumni Chapter Tech Team. You always do us proud. You do us such incredible. You make us look good. You make us stay on point. You provide your services, and yet you're never seen on the camera. But we know you're there. We know what you're doing, and we value what you have contributed. Thank you so very much. Good night, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Good night. We have music going out.
Good night.
Great job, ladies. Thank you for everything.
Good job,
Thank you.
Kim. Good job.
Great job, everyone.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Great job, guys. All right, I'm gonna.
Thanks, Nicholas.